The moving boxes sat half-packed in our downtown apartment like markers of the end of my marriage. Ella stood by the floor-to-ceiling windows, her silhouette outlined against the city skyline she refused to walk away from. "I'm not moving to some godforsaken town in the middle of nowhere, Alex," she said, without turning around. "It's not worth it." I paused, holding her favorite coffee mug, the one with Boss Lady printed in gold letters. $600,000 a year wasn't worth it. The promotion to operations director at Midwest Logistics wasn't worth it. Our marriage apparently wasn't worth it either. "It's a good opportunity, Ella. We could buy a house, start fresh." "Fresh?" She spun around, her perfectly styled blonde hair catching the afternoon light. "Alex, I have a career here. Friends. A life. I'm not throwing that away so you can play big shot in some truck stop town." The sarcasm was already building in my chest. That familiar defense mechanism I'd developed over 3 years of marriage to someone who thought ambition only counted if it happened within city limits. Right. Because managing social media campaigns for overpriced coffee shops is definitely more important than... Don't. Her voice went ice cold. Don't you dare minimize what I do. I set down the mug and really looked at her. Designer jeans that cost more than most people's rent. The Tiffany bracelet I'd bought her for our anniversary. The engagement ring that had maxed out 2 credit cards. All of it suddenly felt like costume jewelry on someone playing a role she'd outgrown. "So what are you saying, exactly?" Ella's phone buzzed. She glanced at it, and I caught the smallest smile before she composed herself. "I'm saying I need space. Time to think. This whole move, it's too fast, too much. The job starts Monday, Ella. I've already accepted. Then you'll be going alone." The words hung in the air like smoke. I waited for her to take them back, to laugh and say she was just scared about the change. Instead, she picked up her phone and started typing. "Temporarily," she added, not looking up. "Just until I figure things out." That's when I knew. It wasn't about the town or the timing or her career. The way she held that phone, the secretive smile, the sudden need for space. I'd seen this movie before. Hell, I'd probably helped write the script by being the devoted husband who never questioned why she worked so many late nights or why her phone was always face down during dinner. "Who is he?" Her fingers stopped moving. "What?" "The guy you're texting. The reason you suddenly can't bear the thought of leaving the city. Who is he?" "Alex, you're being paranoid. Kim told Sarah and Sarah told me. The lie came easy. Sometimes you have to bluff to get the truth." "So who is he?" Ella's face went white, then red. It's complicated." There it was, the confirmation I'd hoped I wouldn't get. I sat down heavily on the couch, surrounded by boxes full of our life together. 3 years of marriage, 5 years total, and she'd been shopping for an upgrade. "How long?" "Alex. How long, Ella?" She set her phone down and finally looked at me. 3 months, but it's not what you think. It's exactly what I think. I stood up, surprised by how calm I felt. "Let me guess. He's got money, connections, probably drives something expensive and lives in a penthouse." Her silence was answer enough. "Well," I said, walking to the bedroom to grab my already packed suitcase. "At least now I don't have to feel guilty about taking the job." "Where are you going?" "To my new house. In my new town. To start my new life." I paused at the door. "You can keep the apartment. The lease is up next month, so you and Mr. Wonderful better figure something out." "Alex, wait!" But I was already gone. The drive to Millbrook took 4 hours, through farmland and small towns that look like movie sets. My new house sat at the end of Maple Ridge Drive, in the kind of gated subdivision that screamed new money. 5 bedrooms, 3-car garage, swimming pool, and more space than one newly single man knew what to do with. I unlocked the front door and walked into my future. Hardwood floors, vaulted ceilings, granite countertops. Everything Ella had said she wanted when we used to browse real estate websites on lazy Sunday mornings. Too bad she wouldn't be here to enjoy it. My phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. "Hey, it's Tom from the trucking yard. Heard you were moving in today. Welcome to the neighborhood. Let me know if you need anything." I smiled for the first time in hours. Maybe this place wouldn't be so bad after all. That night, as I ate takeout Chinese food on my new granite island, my phone lit up with a call from Ella. I let it go to voicemail. Then another call. Then a text. We need to talk. I blocked her number and opened a beer. Tomorrow I'd start my new job, meet my new colleagues, and begin building a life that didn't revolve around someone who thought I wasn't worth following to a better future. What I didn't know yet was that Ella wasn't done with me, and I was definitely not done with her. The Midwest Logistics headquarters looked like something out of a tech startup fever dream. All glass and steel and open floor plans designed to encourage collaboration. I'd been expecting a traditional trucking company with wood paneling and coffee. Instead, I got Herman Miller furniture and a reception desk that probably cost more than my first car. Alex Jensen? A woman in her 50s approached with a confident smile. I'm Susan Martinez, HR Director. Ready for the grand tour? The next 2 hours were a blur of introductions, system passwords, and corporate buzzwords. My office, actual office, not a cubicle, overlooked the main yard where dozens of trucks came and went, like worker ants, serving the Queen. Through the window, I could see a stocky man in coveralls directing traffic with the kind of authority that came from years of experience. That's Tom Bradley, Susan said, following my gaze. Yard supervisor. Been here 15 years. You'll want to get on his good side. He knows where all the bodies are buried. I liked her already. By lunch, word had spread through town that the new operations director was living alone in the biggest house on Maple Ridge. Small towns were like that. Information traveled faster than gossip at a high school reunion. So your wife decided not to make the move? Tom asked, as we grabbed sandwiches from the deli across the street. He was exactly what Central Casting would order for Wise Mentor. Gray beard, calloused hands, and eyes that missed nothing. Something like that. Ah, he nodded knowingly. City girl? You could say that. Well, their loss is our gain. This place has been running on autopilot for 2 years since the last guy retired. We need someone with fresh ideas. Over the next week, I threw myself into the job, streamlined routing systems, negotiated better fuel contracts, implemented tracking software that cut delivery times by 12%. The work was engaging enough to keep my mind off the fact that my marriage had imploded, and the results were impressive enough to earn respect from the drivers and dock workers. Tom introduced me to Maya Rodriguez, no relation to the forbidden Rodriguez family, just a coincidence, who bartended at Murphy's Tap, the local watering hole where half the town seemed to congregate after work. Maya was mid-30s, sharp-eyed, and possessed the supernatural ability of all good bartenders to remember everyone's drink and half their secrets. So you're the mysterious rich guy who bought the Henderson place, she said, sliding a beer across the scarred wooden bar. Town's been buzzing about you. Rich is relative. Not in Millbrook it isn't, she grinned. Don't worry, your secret's safe. We're all rooting for you to stick around. Last 3 people who bought houses in that subdivision moved away within a year. Said it was too quiet. I like quiet. Famous last words. That evening, I was setting up my home office when my phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. Alex, it's me. I got a new phone. We really need to talk. E. I stared at the message for a long moment, then deleted it. But curiosity got the better of me, and I found myself wondering what she wanted to say. Probably that she'd made a mistake, that she missed me, that we could work things out. Too little, too late. The next morning brought another text. I know you're getting these messages. Please just call me back. And another that evening. Alex, I'm sorry. I made a terrible mistake. Can we please talk? I was starting to enjoy ignoring her. Friday night at Murphy's, Maya poured my usual beer and leaned across the bar conspiratorially. So I heard through the grapevine that your ex has been asking around about you. What kind of asking around? The kind where she called the main office pretending to be from some survey company, trying to get information about employee salaries. Maya's eyes sparkled with mischief. Susan shut that down real quick. Interesting. Ella was fishing for information, which meant she was probably starting to realize what she'd walked away from. She also called Murphy's yesterday, asking if we'd seen you with anyone. And what did you tell her? That our customers' personal lives are none of our business? Maya grinned. But between you and me, she sounded pretty desperate. That weekend, I got my first look at just how desperate when she showed up at my front door. I was grilling burgers on the back patio when the doorbell rang. Through the security camera app on my phone, I could see Ella standing on my front porch in a sundress I'd never seen before, holding what looked like a bottle of wine. I ignored it. She rang again, then knocked. Then walked around to the back gate, which I'd had the foresight to lock. "Alex!" "I know you're back there. I can smell the grill." I took a sip of my beer and flipped the burgers. "Please, just 5 minutes." Let me explain. I could have let her stew out there all evening, but curiosity won out. I walked to the gate, beer in hand, and looked at her through the slats. Explain what, exactly? She looked different. Thinner, maybe, or just tired. The designer confidence she'd worn like armor seemed to have developed cracks. "I made a mistake, Alex. A huge mistake. I was scared about the move, about leaving everything I knew, and I handled it badly. By sleeping with someone else?" Her face crumpled. "It wasn't supposed to happen. Landon was just... He was there when I was confused and scared, and he said all the right things. Landon. Even his name sounded pretentious. So you're saying it's my fault for taking a job that would double our income and give us a better life?" "No, that's not what I'm saying at all. I'm saying I was an idiot who threw away the best thing in her life because she was too proud to admit she was scared. I had to give her credit. It was a good speech. Probably practiced it in the car on the drive over. Where's Landon now?" She looked away. It's complicated." "Complicated how?" "He's not ready for anything serious. He says he needs time to figure out what he wants." There it was. Mr. Wonderful had gotten what he wanted and moved on, leaving Ella to realize that the grass wasn't actually greener on the other side. Now she was back, hoping to salvage what she'd thrown away. So I'm the backup plan. "No, Alex, you're not a backup plan. You're home." It might have worked 6 months ago. Hell, it might have worked 6 weeks ago. But standing there in the backyard of my new house, successful job, new friends, and a life that didn't revolve around managing someone else's insecurities, I felt nothing but mild annoyance. Go home, Ella. This is my home too. We're still married. Not for long. I walked back to the grill, leaving her standing at the gate. She called my name a few more times, then I heard her car start up and drive away. That night, Maya texted me. "Heard your ex was in town today. Everything okay?" "Better than okay," I replied. She's starting to figure out what she lost. "And you?" I looked around my empty house, my successful, peaceful, drama-free house, and smiled. I'm just getting started. Monday morning brought news that Ella had been asking around town about me over the weekend. According to Tom, she'd stopped by 3 different businesses claiming to be my wife and trying to get information about my job, my house, and whether I was seeing anyone locally. Small towns don't take kindly to outsiders stirring up trouble, Tom said as we reviewed the weekend delivery reports, especially outsiders who abandoned their husbands and then came crawling back. How do you know she abandoned me? Tom gave me a look that suggested I was being naive. Son, in a town this size, everyone knows everything. Mrs. Halpern lives 2 houses down from you, and she's got eyes like a hawk and ears like a bat. She saw the whole gate conversation Saturday night. Mrs. Halpern was 70-something, widowed, and apparently the unofficial neighborhood watch coordinator. I'd waved to her a few times while getting my mail, but hadn't realized she was conducting surveillance operations from her front porch. What exactly did she hear? Enough to know your wife cheated on you with some city boy named Landon, and now she wants you back because he dumped her. Tom shrugged. Mrs. Halpern's got strong opinions about women who don't appreciate good men. Great. My personal life was now public entertainment. That evening at Murphy's, Maya confirmed that the gossip mill was working overtime. Your ex made quite an impression, she said, polishing glasses with unnecessary vigor. Walked into the diner Saturday morning like she owned the place, asking questions about you. Then she tried the same thing at the hardware store and the gas station. What kind of questions? Whether you were dating anyone, how much money you were making, whether you seemed happy. Maya's expression darkened. She also made some comments about how she couldn't understand what you saw in a place like this. I'm guessing that didn't go over well. About as well as you'd expect. Sarah from the diner said she was snooty, and Bill from the hardware store used words I can't repeat in mixed company. I was starting to understand that Ella had seriously underestimated small-town loyalty. These people had welcomed me, included me, and now they were taking her behavior as a personal insult. There's something else, Maya said, leaning closer. Kim, that's your ex's friend, right? She's been posting all over social media about how you abandoned your wife and forced her to stay in the city alone. This was news to me. Kim's posting about me? Screenshots, honey. The whole sob story about how you're selfish and controlling, how you put your career ahead of your marriage. Maya pulled out her phone and showed me Kim's Instagram story. She's been painting you as the villain. I scrolled through the posts. Kim had crafted a narrative where I was the bad guy, who'd given Ella an ultimatum and then cut off contact when she'd tried to work things out. There was no mention of Landon or the affair, just a story about a heartless husband who'd abandoned his loving wife. How many people have seen this? It's been shared about 50 times so far, but here's the thing. She made one crucial mistake. Maya swiped to another screenshot, this one showing Kim's location services. Every post about my abandonment was tagged from the same upscale bar downtown. The same bar where, according to the timestamps, she'd been posting at all hours of the day and night for the past month. She's been covering for your ex's affair, Maya said, giving her an alibi, probably lying to mutual friends about where Ella was spending her time. The pieces were falling into place. Kim wasn't just Ella's friend, she was her accomplice, which meant she knew exactly how the marriage had really ended, and she was deliberately spreading lies to protect Ella's reputation. Can you do me a favor? Depends on the favor. I told her my plan. Wednesday night, Maya texted me a video she'd taken at the downtown bar where Kim liked to hold court. It showed a guy in his early 30s with perfectly styled hair and a watch that probably cost more than most people's cars. He was drunk, loud, and bragging to anyone who'd listen about his conquest of a married woman. She was so easy, Landon slurred into Maya's phone, apparently unaware he was being recorded. Told her husband she needed space, then moved right into my place. These married chicks are desperate for excitement. The video was pure gold. Maya had struck up a conversation with him at the bar, pretending to be impressed by his stories. He'd been more than happy to share details about his affair with Ella, including how they'd been planning it for months and how pathetic her husband was for not seeing it coming. What should I do with this? Maya asked when I called her. Send it to me. I have some ideas. That weekend was Millbrook's annual Harvest Festival. 3 days of food trucks, local bands, and community spirit in the town square. I'd been looking forward to it, as a chance to get more involved in local life. What I hadn't expected was for Ella and Landon to show up Saturday afternoon, apparently trying to make some kind of public statement about their relationship. They arrived in his BMW convertible, music loud enough to announce their presence to half the festival. Ella wore designer jeans and heels completely inappropriate for a small-town street fair, while Landon sported the kind of casual, expensive look that screamed, "Trust fund, baby." I was manning the Midwest logistics booth, handing out promotional materials and talking to potential customers when I spotted them near the funnel cake stand. Ella was looking around nervously, probably hoping to spot me in the crowd. Landon was checking his phone and looking like he'd rather be anywhere else. "Well, well," Tom said, following my gaze. "Looks like your ex brought her boyfriend to the party." "Looks like it. You want to leave? I can handle the booth." "No," I said, surprised by how calm I felt. Let them enjoy the festival. What happened next was better than anything I could have planned. Mrs. Halpern, who'd been working the church bake sale booth, spotted Ella and made a beeline straight for them. At 75, she moved with the determination of someone who'd raised 6 children and buried 1 husband, and she had no patience for people who didn't treat marriage as a sacred institution. "You must be the wife who abandoned Alex," she said, loudly enough for half the square to hear. Ella's face went white. Excuse me? I'm Mrs. Halpern. I live 2 houses down from your husband. Well, I guess he's your ex-husband now, isn't he? Such a nice young man. We're all very fond of him." The conversation was attracting attention. People were stopping to listen, including several of my co-workers and half the town council. "I didn't abandon anyone," Ella said, her voice rising. "Alex and I are just going through a rough patch." "Is that what you call it?" Mrs. Halpern's voice carried the authority of someone who'd been the town's unofficial moral authority for decades. "Because from where I sit, it looks like you cheated on your husband, and now you're parading your boyfriend around his new hometown." Landon stepped forward, probably thinking he could charm his way out of the situation. "Ma'am, I think there's been some misunderstanding." "The only misunderstanding," Mrs. Halpern said, turning her laser focus on him, "is you thinking you're welcome here." By now, a crowd had gathered. Tom was grinning like he was watching his favorite movie. Maya had appeared from somewhere and was recording everything on her phone. Even the mayor had stopped by to see what the commotion was about. Ella grabbed Landon's arm. We should go. But Landon, drunk on his own ego and probably a few festival beers, made the mistake of trying to assert himself. Look, lady, I don't know what your problem is, but Alex is a grown man. If he can't keep his wife happy, that's not my fault. The silence that followed was deafening. Mrs. Halpern smiled, the kind of smile that had probably terrified generations of misbehaving children. You're absolutely right, young man. Alex is a grown man, a successful, decent, hard-working man who's made quite an impression on this community. And you're... She let the pause hang in the air. Well, you're nobody at all, aren't you? The crowd was loving it. Someone actually started clapping. Ella was mortified, Landon was furious, and I was enjoying every second of it from my booth 30 feet away. That's when Landon made his second mistake of the day. Come on, Ella. Let's get out of this backwater dump. Wrong thing to say in front of 300 proud residents of Millbrook. The mood shifted instantly from amused to hostile. Tom stepped forward, and I could see several other men doing the same. Even some of the women looked ready to throw down. I think you should leave, the mayor said quietly. Right now. Ella and Landon beat a hasty retreat to his BMW, but the damage was done. The entire town had witnessed their humiliation, and Maya had captured every second of it on video. That night at Murphy's, the festival incident was all anyone could talk about. Did you see his face when Mrs. Halpern called him nobody? Sarah from the diner was practically cackling. I thought he was going to cry. And the wife, added Bill from the hardware store, acting like she was too good for our little town, then getting put in her place by a 75-year-old woman. Maya slid me a beer and a knowing smile. So, you want to see what I recorded? The video was even better than I'd hoped. Crystal clear audio, perfect angles, and Landon's arrogant face, captured in high definition as he insulted the entire town. It would make excellent social media content. What are you thinking? Maya asked. I pulled out my phone and started typing. I'm thinking it's time to show Kim and her followers what really happened to my marriage. Sunday morning brought a flurry of angry texts from Kim, whose social media narrative had been thoroughly demolished by Maya's festival video. I'd posted it to my own social accounts with the simple caption, "The truth about my abandoned wife and her boyfriend's opinion of small-town values." The video had been shared 47 times in the first hour. You're sick, Kim's text read. Humiliating Ella like that. She made one mistake and you're destroying her life. One mistake? I replied. 3 months of cheating is one mistake? She was confused. She thought you didn't love her anymore. So confused, she moved her boyfriend into our apartment. The text stopped after that. Monday at work, Susan Martinez knocked on my office door with a concerned expression. Alex, I need to ask you about something. We received a call Friday afternoon from someone claiming to be conducting a salary verification for a mortgage company. They were asking about your employment status and compensation. Let me guess. They said they were calling on behalf of my wife? Actually, they claimed to be calling on your behalf, but when I asked for verification, they hung up. Susan sat down across from my desk. Look, I don't know what's going on in your personal life, and it's not my business. But if someone is trying to access confidential employment information under false pretenses, that's a problem. I'll handle it. There's something else. The same person called back this morning, this time claiming to be from the IRS and demanding salary information for a tax investigation. Susan's expression hardened. I told them to submit their request through proper channels and hung up. Ella was getting desperate, and desperate people made stupid mistakes. That afternoon, Tom found me in the yard office, going over delivery schedules. Got a minute? There's something you should see. He led me to the security office, where monitors showed feeds from cameras positioned around the trucking yard. On one screen, I could see a silver BMW, parked across the street from the main gate. Been there about an hour, Tom said. Same car from the festival yesterday. I could make out 2 figures in the front seats, Ella and Landon, apparently conducting surveillance on my workplace. What do you think they're up to? Nothing good, Tom replied. You want me to call the police? Not yet. Let's see what they do. We didn't have to wait long. Around 5 o'clock, as the day shift was ending, Landon got out of the car and approached the gate. I watched on the monitor as he tried to strike up a conversation with Jake, one of our younger drivers. "He's asking about you," Tom said, listening to the audio feed. "Wants to know what kind of boss you are, whether the guys like you, that sort of thing." Jake, bless him, was giving Landon nothing but professional courtesy and vague responses, but I could see where this was heading. "They're fishing for dirt," I said, "looking for anything they can use to damage my reputation." "In that case," Tom said with a grin, "maybe we should give them something to really worry about." Tom's plan was beautifully simple. He called his nephew Danny, who worked part-time at the local auto shop, and asked him to swing by with a tow truck. Danny was more than happy to help, especially after Tom explained the situation. 20 minutes later, Danny pulled up behind the BMW with lights flashing and started hooking up the tow chains. Landon came running from the gate. "Hey, what are you doing?" "Towing your vehicle, sir. It's been reported as abandoned." "Abandoned? I've been here for an hour." "Sir, this is a no parking zone. Signs are clearly posted. Vehicle's been here long enough to constitute abandonment under City Ordinance 247B. I had no idea if City Ordinance 247B actually existed, but it sounded official enough to give Landon pause. "This is ridiculous. I'm calling the police." "That's your right, sir. They can meet us at the impound lot." Ella got out of the car, looking frantic. "Please, there's been a misunderstanding. We were just—" "Ma'am, I'm just doing my job. You can call the number on this card to arrange release of the vehicle." Danny handed her a business card. "Impound fee is $200, plus $50 per day storage." $200? Plus the tow fee. That's another $150. I watched from the security office as Ella and Landon argued with Danny, who maintained professional courtesy while absolutely refusing to unhook the BMW. Finally, they gave up and called an Uber to take them back to town. "That was beautiful," I told Tom, as we watched the tow truck disappear down the street. "Danny's a good kid. He'll keep the car overnight and release it tomorrow for the standard fee. Perfectly legal, perfectly reasonable, and perfectly inconvenient for your ex and her boyfriend." That evening at Murphy's, word of the towing incident had already made the rounds. The general consensus was that anyone stupid enough to stake out a trucking company deserved whatever they got. "They're not giving up easy, are they?" Maya observed, sliding me my usual beer. "Apparently not. So what's the next move?" I was about to answer when my phone buzzed with a call from an unknown number. I let it go to voicemail, then listened to the message. It was Landon, and he was furious. "Listen, you small-town nobody. I don't know what kind of game you think you're playing, but it ends now. You want to embarrass us at your little festival? Fine. You want to have our car towed? Whatever. But if you think you can intimidate me, you're sorely mistaken. I've got lawyers, I've got money, and I've got friends who can make your life very difficult. So back off, or you'll see what real power looks like." I played the message for Maya, who listened with growing amazement. "Did he just threaten you? On a recorded voicemail?" "Sounds like it. This guy's not very bright, is he?" "Apparently not." But Landon's stupidity was about to become my opportunity, because while he was busy making threats, I was busy gathering information. And thanks to Maya's connections in the city, I was learning some very interesting things about Mr. Landon Pierce. Like the fact that his successful entrepreneur image was built on family money and failed ventures. Like the fact that he'd been evicted from 2 apartments in the past year for non-payment of rent. Like the fact that his BMW was actually leased, and he was 3 months behind on payments. Most interesting of all was the information Maya had gathered from her friend Rachel, who worked at the same marketing firm as Ella. According to Rachel, Ella had been bragging about her rich boyfriend to anyone who'd listen, apparently unaware that Landon's wealth was mostly an illusion. "She quit her job last week," Maya reported. "Told them she was moving in with her boyfriend and didn't need to work anymore." "She quit?" "Burned her bridges, too. Told her boss exactly what she thought of the company on her way out the door." So Ella had quit her job, probably burned through her savings, and was now dependent on a man who was living beyond his means and making threats he couldn't back up. The situation was getting more interesting by the day. Wednesday night, things escalated. I was at home, grilling dinner and enjoying the peace of my backyard when Tom called. "Alex, you need to get down to the yard. We've got a situation." "What kind of situation?" "The kind where your ex-boyfriend is trying to break into the office building." I was there in 10 minutes. Tom met me at the gate with Jake and 2 other drivers. In the distance, I could see figures moving around the main office building with flashlights. How many? I asked. 2, maybe 3. They cut through the fence about 20 minutes ago. Security cameras caught them, but they're wearing hoodies and keeping their heads down. You call the police? Not yet. Thought you might want to handle this personally. Tom knew me well. We spread out and approached the building from different angles. The intruders were at the back entrance, apparently trying to jimmy the lock on the employee door. As we got closer, I could hear voices. Landon's voice, specifically, cursing about the difficulty of breaking and entering. "This is stupid, Landon," a second voice said. "If we get caught, we're not going to get caught. I just need to get into his office, find something we can use against him." "Like what?" "I don't know." "Financial records, employee complaints, anything that proves he's not the golden boy everyone thinks he is." I signaled to Tom and the others to stay back, then stepped out of the shadows. "Looking for something, Landon?" He spun around, flashlight beam hitting me in the face. "Jesus! You scared me. You're trespassing on private property." We were just... "Breaking and entering. Attempted burglary. Criminal trespass." I stepped closer. "Should I keep going? Or do you want to explain what you're doing here?" The second figure stepped into the light. A younger man who looked like Landon, but with less confidence and more muscle. Probably his brother. "We weren't stealing anything," the brother said. "We were just looking around. At 10 o'clock at night. With bolt cutters and a crowbar." Landon had recovered some of his composure. "You can't prove anything. We could have been here for any reason." "Actually, I can prove quite a lot." I held up my phone, which had been recording since I'd stepped out of the shadows, including the part where you admitted you were looking for financial records in my office. The color drained from Landon's face. "Now," I continued, "you have 2 choices. You can leave right now, and we'll pretend this never happened. Or I can call the police, and you can explain to them why you thought breaking into a trucking company was a good idea." "This isn't over," Landon said, but his heart wasn't in it anymore. "Actually, it is, because if I see you anywhere near this property again, or near my house, or anywhere in this town, I'm calling the police and pressing charges. And then I'm sending copies of this recording to every social media platform I can find." Landon and his brother slunk away into the night, leaving behind their bolt cutters and what remained of their dignity. "Think they'll be back?" Tom asked as we watched them disappear. "No," I said, "but Ella will be. She's not done yet." I was right. Thursday morning brought a text from a new number. "Alex, please. We need to talk. I know things got out of hand, but I can explain everything. I'm coming to your house tonight. Please don't ignore me." This time, I decided not to ignore her, because I was finally ready for the conversation we should have had months ago. The conversation where I told her exactly what I thought of her boyfriend, and her pathetic attempts to salvage a situation she'd created. It was time to end this once and for all. Ella arrived at 7 o'clock sharp, alone this time, driving a rental car that suggested Landon's BMW was still in the impound lot. She looked different, thinner, more desperate, with the kind of exhaustion that came from weeks of stress and poor decisions. I met her at the front door instead of making her stand at the gate. After all, this was going to be our final conversation, and I wanted it to be memorable. "Thank you for seeing me," she said, clutching a manila envelope like a lifeline. "Come in. We might as well do this properly." She followed me into the living room, looking around at the house she'd refused to share. The furniture I'd bought alone, the decorations I'd chosen without her input, the life I'd built after she'd walked away. "It's beautiful, Alex." Everything we talked about. Everything you said you wanted and then decided wasn't worth having. She sat on the edge of the couch, still holding the envelope. "I brought something. Something you need to see. Before we get to that, I have some questions." "Okay. How long were you planning the affair before you started sleeping with him?" She flinched. "Alex, simple question, Ella. How long were you planning to cheat on me?" "It wasn't planned. It just happened." "Try again." "Maya has video of Landon bragging about how you'd been planning it for months." Her face went white. "He said that?" "He said a lot of things. About how easy you were, how desperate married women are for excitement, how pathetic your husband was for not seeing it coming." I leaned back in my chair, enjoying the look of horror on her face. "Should I keep going?" "He's lying. It wasn't like that." So you weren't planning to leave me for him? It's complicated. It's really not. You were cheating on me, planning to leave me, and using the job offer as an excuse to end the marriage without taking responsibility for your affair. The only thing that went wrong was that Landon turned out to be a loser who can't afford his own lifestyle. Tears started rolling down her cheeks. You don't understand. He told me he loved me. He said we had a future together. And you believed him. Yes, I believed him because I was lonely and scared, and you were so focused on your career that you barely noticed I existed. There it was. The real reason. Or at least the reason she'd convinced herself was real. So it's my fault you cheated. That's not what I'm saying. It's exactly what you're saying. I worked too much, didn't pay enough attention to you, so you had no choice but to sleep with someone else. Alex, please. I know I made mistakes. Mistakes? I stood up, the anger I'd been holding back for weeks finally breaking free. Ella, you didn't make mistakes. You made choices. You chose to cheat. You chose to lie. You chose to walk away from our marriage rather than work on it. And now you're choosing to blame me for your choices. Her face crumpled as she started crying harder, but I wasn't done. I couldn't stop now. The hurt, the betrayal, all of it had been building up inside me, and it was finally spilling over. And when your boyfriend turned out to be a fraud who couldn't afford to keep you in the lifestyle you thought you deserved, you chose to come crawling back, expecting me to pretend none of it happened. My voice was a mixture of disbelief and anger. What did you think? That I'd just welcome you back with open arms, like none of this had destroyed everything between us? I never expected that, she whispered, shaking her head, but the defensiveness in her voice only made me angrier. Then what did you expect? I asked, my voice rising now. Because it sure looks like you thought I'd forgive everything because you were tired of the consequences of your choices. She held up an envelope with trembling hands. I expected to give you this, she said quietly, her voice barely above a whisper. I took the envelope, my fingers shaking as I opened it. Inside were divorce papers, already signed by Ella, and a handwritten letter. I read the letter quickly, my eyes scanning the pages, my heart sinking with every word. I'm not here to ask you to take me back, she said, her voice barely audible now. I'm here to apologize, and to give you what you want. I glanced at her before reading the letter again. It was 3 pages of apologies, explanations, and admissions of guilt. She took full responsibility for the affair, acknowledged that she'd destroyed our marriage, and asked only that I not hate her forever. It was everything I had wanted to hear 3 months ago when this first started to unravel, but now it felt hollow, like too little too late. Why now? I asked, my voice quieter but no less bitter. Why not earlier? Why wait until everything fell apart around you? Because Landon is gone. Because I lost my job, she said, wiping her eyes as the tears kept coming. Because I finally realized what I threw away, and what I thought was so important wasn't. She paused, taking a deep breath before continuing. And because I found out something else. Which is, I asked, already dreading what was coming next. He's been cheating on me too, with Kim. The room fell silent, except for the sound of Ella's sobs and my own heartbeat pounding in my ears. It was as if the floor had dropped out from under me, and I had to take a moment to process what she'd just said. Kim? Your Kim? I asked, my voice filled with disbelief. My best friend Kim, Ella confirmed, her voice thick with anger now. The one who's been posting all over social media about what a terrible husband you are. The one who's been covering for me, lying for me, helping me justify what I did. Ella's voice turned bitter, and I could see the rage that had been brewing inside her. Turns out she was sleeping with him the whole time. I sat back down, trying to process this new information. Kim, who had been painting me as the villain to everyone around us, had been sleeping with Ella's boyfriend the entire time. Kim, who had been offering me moral support, making sure I understood how horrible things had been for Ella, had been betraying her in the worst way imaginable. The hypocrisy was almost too much to bear. How did you find out? I asked, struggling to keep my voice steady. I walked in on them. Tuesday night, at his apartment, Ella said, her words sharp as she remembered. They were in his bed, laughing about how stupid I was. The irony of the situation wasn't lost on me. Ella had cheated on me with Landon, who'd then been cheating on her with Kim. The same Kim who had been defending her, lying for her, covering for her, had been secretly sleeping with the man she'd left me for. "What did Landon say when you confronted him?" I asked, dreading her answer but needing to know. "That I was a rebound. That he never intended for it to be serious," she said, her voice breaking. "He said Kim was more his type anyway. Younger, prettier, less baggage." She looked up at me, her eyes swollen and red from crying. "He said I was just a desperate housewife looking for excitement." The words hit me harder than I expected. It wasn't just the betrayal. It was the casual cruelty in Landon's words, the complete lack of respect for Ella, for me, for the years we'd spent together. It was as if none of it had ever meant anything to him. I didn't know what to say. The truth was that nothing Ella had done made sense anymore. It wasn't about mistakes or regrets. It was about choices. Choices that had shattered everything. And now, as much as she was trying to take responsibility, it was too late for apologies. I should have felt vindicated. I should have been enjoying her pain, celebrating the fact that she'd gotten exactly what she deserved. Instead, I just felt tired. So now what? Now I sign the papers, you file them, and we both move on with our lives. She stood up, smoothing down her dress. I'm moving back to my parents' house in Ohio. Starting over. What about Kim? What about her? She can have him. They deserve each other. Ella walked toward the door, then turned back. For what it's worth, Alex, you were a good husband. Better than I deserved. I hope you find someone who appreciates what I was too stupid to see. After she left, I sat in my living room holding the divorce papers and trying to figure out how I felt. Relief, certainly. Vindication, absolutely. But also something else. A sense that the story wasn't quite finished. Because while Ella was taking responsibility for her actions and accepting the consequences, Kim and Landon were still out there, still spreading lies about me, still playing the victims in a drama they'd created. That couldn't stand. The next morning, I called Maya. I need a favor. A big one. Name it. I need you to help me throw a party. Saturday night, Murphy's Tap was packed for what I'd advertised as a new beginning celebration. Half the town showed up, including Tom, Susan, Mrs. Halpern, and dozens of people who'd become friends over the past few months. What they didn't know was that Kim and Landon were also in town, having driven down that afternoon to collect some of Landon's belongings from the impound lot, and probably to make one last attempt at salvaging their reputations. Maya had made sure they knew about the party. At 9 o'clock, just as the celebration was hitting its peak, Kim and Landon walked into Murphy's. The conversation stopped abruptly as people recognized them from the festival incident and the various social media posts that had been circulating. Kim looked around nervously, probably wondering why she'd thought this was a good idea. Landon, true to form, strutted up to the bar like he owned the place. "Well, well," he said, loudly enough for everyone to hear, "if it isn't the famous Alex Jensen and his small-town fan club." "Landon," I said, from my seat at the end of the bar. "Kim. So glad you could make it. We're not here for your party," Kim said. "We're here to set the record straight." "About what?" "About the lies you've been spreading. About what really happened to your marriage." Maya, who'd positioned herself behind the bar with her phone ready, started recording. "Please," I said, "set the record straight. Tell everyone what really happened." Kim launched into a prepared speech about how I'd been controlling and manipulative, how I'd forced Ella to choose between her career and our marriage, how I'd abandoned her when she'd tried to work things out. It was a good performance, delivered with conviction and just enough emotion to seem genuine. If I hadn't known the truth, I might have been convinced. When she finished, the room was quiet for a long moment. Then Mrs. Halpern started laughing. "Honey," she said, looking at Kim with the kind of pity usually reserved for small children and wounded animals, "do you really think we're that stupid?" "Excuse me?" "We know what happened. We know about the affair, about the lies, about you helping cover it up." Mrs. Halpern stood up, all 5 feet of her radiating authority. "What we didn't know was that you were sleeping with him too." Kim's face went white. "That's not—" "Tuesday night, the Comfort Inn on Route 9. Room 237. You checked in together at 6:15 p.m. Mrs. Halpern smiled sweetly. "My granddaughter works the front desk there." The silence that followed was deafening. Landon tried to salvage the situation. "Look, whatever you people think you know, we know you're a fraud," Tom interrupted. "Living off family money, 3 months behind on your car payments, evicted from 2 apartments. We know you've been cheating on Ella with her best friend," added Sarah from the diner. "We know you tried to break into Alex's workplace," said Jake from the trucking yard. "And we know," Miss Halpern said with finality, "that you're both exactly the kind of people this town doesn't need." Kim was crying now, mascara running down her cheeks. Landon was looking around the room like a trapped animal, realizing that his usual charm and bluster weren't going to work here. "You people don't know anything," he said, desperately. "You're just a bunch of small-town losers who—" He never finished the sentence because Tom had stood up, and Tom was not a small man. "I think you should leave," Tom said quietly. "Right now." Landon and Kim practically ran for the door. As they disappeared into the night, the bar erupted in cheers and applause. Maya stopped recording and posted the video to social media with the caption, "The truth always comes out." I raised my beer to the crowd. "To new beginnings," I said. "To new beginnings," they replied. And for the first time in months, I felt like the story was finally complete. The video from Murphy's went viral overnight. Maya's recording of Kim's failed attempt at damage control, combined with Mrs. Halpern's devastating revelation about the hotel receipts, had been shared over 300 times by Sunday morning. But the real coup de grace came from an unexpected source. Susan Martinez called me at home Sunday afternoon with news that changed everything. "Alex, I need to tell you something about your ex-wife. Something I probably should have mentioned weeks ago." "What about her?" "Before you left your previous job, she called your old HR department. She tried to file a complaint against you for inappropriate behavior." The words hit me like a physical blow. "She what?" "She claimed you'd been pressuring her, threatening her career, creating a hostile work environment. She wanted them to investigate you and possibly take legal action." I sat down heavily, trying to process this information. "When?" 2 weeks before you gave notice. She said she was afraid to come forward earlier because you'd threatened to ruin her career if she spoke out." "That's insane. We were married. We lived together." "That's what your old HR director said. She told Ella that harassment laws don't apply to married couples in their own homes, and that if she had concerns about abuse, she should contact the police, not corporate HR." The pieces were falling into place now. Ella hadn't just been planning to leave me. She'd been planning to destroy me on her way out. "There's more," Susan continued. "She also tried to get them to investigate your finances, claiming you'd been embezzling money to pay for gambling debts." "Gambling debts?" "Apparently, she told them you had a secret addiction and had been stealing from company accounts to cover your losses. She wanted them to audit your expense reports and financial records." I was speechless. The woman I'd been married to for 3 years had tried to have me arrested, fired, and potentially sent to prison. Why didn't anyone tell me? Because there was nothing to investigate. Your old boss knew you, trusted you, and told Ella that if she filed false reports, she could be charged with filing a false police report and defamation. She dropped it after that. Does anyone else know about this? Just me and your old HR director. But Alex, if she was willing to go that far before, what do you think she'll do now that her life has fallen apart? It was a good question, and I was about to get my answer. Monday morning brought a call from Tom at 6 a.m. "Alex, you need to get down here. Someone vandalized the yard overnight." I threw on clothes and drove to work, where I found a scene that looked like a war zone. Someone had spray-painted profanity across the side of the main building, slashed the tires on 3 trucks, and dumped motor oil all over the loading dock. "Security cameras?" I asked. "They knew where they were," Tom replied grimly. "Avoided all the angles, wore masks and hoodies, professional job. But they'd made one mistake. In their haste to avoid the cameras, they'd left behind a receipt from the hardware store where they'd bought the spray paint. The receipt was time-stamped 11:47 p.m. Sunday night, and it was paid for with a credit card. Landon's credit card. "What do you want to do?" Tom asked. "Call the police. File a report. Press charges." "You sure?" "This is going to get messy. It's already messy. Time to end it." The police took the vandalism seriously, especially when I showed them the receipt and explained the history of harassment and attempted break-ins. Detective Morrison, a no-nonsense woman in her 40s, listened to the whole story with growing interest. So your ex-wife tried to have you investigated for harassment and embezzlement? Her boyfriend has been making threats and attempting break-ins, and now someone matching his description has vandalized your workplace? That's about the size of it. We'll need to bring them in for questioning. Do you know where they're staying? As it turned out, Kim had posted their location on Instagram that morning. A photo of room service breakfast at the Hampton Inn with the caption, "Roughing It in Small-Town America." The police picked them up at noon. By evening, the whole story was public record. Landon had been charged with criminal mischief, destruction of property, and criminal trespass. Kim had been charged as an accessory. Both had been released on bail, but not before spending 6 hours in the Millbrook jail and having their mugshots taken. Maya, who had connections everywhere, had copies of the mugshots within an hour. "What do you want me to do with these?" she asked, showing me the photos on her phone. Landon looked exactly like what he was, a spoiled rich kid who'd never faced consequences for his actions. Kim looked like she'd been crying for hours. "Post them," I said, "with the full story." "You sure?" "This is nuclear option territory. They tried to destroy my life, my career, and my reputation. They vandalized my workplace and cost my company thousands of dollars in damages. They made their choice." Maya nodded and started typing. The post went live at 8 p.m. with the caption, "Meet Landon Pierce and Kim Martinez, the couple who thought they could terrorize a small town and get away with it. Full story in comments." The story Maya told was comprehensive and devastating. The affair, the lies, the social media campaign against me, the attempted break-in, the vandalism. All of it laid out in chronological order with photos, videos, and documentation. Within 2 hours, it had been shared over 1,000 times. By Wednesday, Landon and Kim's story had spread far beyond Millbrook. Local news stations picked it up as a human interest story about small-town justice. Their employers saw it. Their families saw it. Their friends saw it. Kim lost her job at the marketing firm. Landon's family cut off his trust fund. Both of them were facing civil lawsuits from Midwest Logistics for the cost of repairing the vandalism. But the final blow came from an unexpected source. Thursday afternoon, I received a call from Rachel, Kim's former co-worker at the marketing firm. "Alex, this is Rachel Morrison. I worked with your ex-wife." "I remember. What can I do for you?" "I wanted to apologize. Kim convinced a bunch of us that you were this terrible person who'd abandoned his wife. We believed her, and some of us shared her posts about you. I appreciate the apology. There's something else. Something you should know about what Ella was doing before she left." Rachel went on to tell me about Ella's final weeks at the marketing firm. How she'd been stealing client contacts and proprietary information. How she'd been bad-mouthing the company to clients, trying to convince them to follow her to a new firm she was planning to start with Landon. "She was going to use your divorce settlement to fund the startup," Rachel explained. "She had this whole plan worked out. Take half your assets, steal our client list, and set up a competing firm with Landon as her business partner." "What happened to that plan?" Turns out Landon didn't know anything about marketing and had no interest in actually working. He just wanted access to her money. Rachel paused. She figured that out about the same time she caught him with Kim. So Ella's plan had been even more elaborate than I'd realized. She hadn't just been planning to leave me. She'd been planning to rob me, use the money to start a business with her boyfriend, and destroy my reputation to cover her tracks. Why are you telling me this? Because she's not done. I heard through the grapevine that she's talking to a lawyer about contesting the divorce. She thinks she can claim you forced her to sign the papers under duress. I thanked Rachel and hung up, then immediately called my own lawyer. By Friday, I had a restraining order against Ella, Landon, and Kim. All three were prohibited from contacting me, coming within 500 feet of my home or workplace, or posting about me on social media. But Ella, true to form, decided to make one last play. Saturday morning, she showed up at the Harvest Festival, the same festival where she and Landon had been humiliated the week before. This time she was alone, dressed in jeans and a sweater instead of designer clothes, carrying a sign that read, "I'm sorry, Alex." She positioned herself in the town square, right where everyone could see her, and started what appeared to be one-woman protest for forgiveness. It might have been touching, if it hadn't been a complete violation of the restraining order. Mrs. Halpern called me first. "Alex, honey, your ex-wife is making a scene in the town square. Should I call the police?" Already on it, I called Detective Morrison, who dispatched a patrol car immediately. Then I drove downtown to watch the final act of this drama play out. By the time I arrived, a crowd had gathered around Ella. She was crying, holding her sign, and giving what sounded like a prepared speech about redemption and second chances. "I know I made mistakes," she was saying. "I know I hurt people. But I'm trying to make amends. I'm trying to be better." It was a good performance. Some of the tourists and out-of-town visitors looked genuinely moved, but the locals weren't buying it. "Ma'am," said Officer Jenkins as he approached with his partner, "I need you to come with me." "I'm not doing anything wrong," Ella protested. "I'm just exercising my right to free speech." "You're violating a restraining order," Officer Jenkins replied calmly. "You need to come with me, now." That's when Ella saw me in the crowd. "Alex," she called out, dropping her sign. "Alex, please, just talk to me." She started toward me, but Officer Jenkins caught her arm. "Ma'am, you need to stop right there." "This is insane," Ella shouted, loud enough for the entire square to hear. "All I did was fall in love with someone else. People make mistakes. People change their minds. That doesn't make me a criminal." The crowd was watching in fascination as Ella was handcuffed and led away, still protesting her innocence and demanding that someone listen to her side of the story. Maya, who'd been filming the entire incident, looked at me with something like awe. That woman just doesn't know when to quit, does she? Apparently not. So what happens now? I watched the police car disappear down Main Street, carrying Ella away from my life for what I hoped would be the final time. Now she goes to jail for violating the restraining order. Now she faces additional charges for harassment and stalking. Now her lawyer explains to her that showing up at a public event with a sign doesn't constitute making amends. It constitutes continued harassment. And you? I looked around the town square, filled with people who'd become friends, who'd supported me through the worst period of my life, who'd stood up for me when strangers tried to destroy my reputation. Now I go home to my house, in my town, and get on with my life. Maya raised her coffee cup in a mock toast. "To getting on with your life." "To getting on with my life," I agreed. That evening, as I sat on my back patio grilling dinner and enjoying the peace of my suburban paradise, my phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. For a moment, I thought it might be Ella, somehow texting from jail. Then I read the message. "Hi, Alex. This is Detective Morrison. Thought you'd want to know. Your ex-wife has been charged with violating the restraining order, public disturbance, and stalking. Her bail has been set at $10,000. She's also been served with a civil lawsuit from Midwest Logistics for her role in the vandalism conspiracy. Her lawyer has advised her to accept a plea deal and leave the state. Thought you'd sleep better knowing this is finally over. Detective Morrison." I deleted the message and took a sip of my beer. It was over. Ella was facing criminal charges and civil liability. Landon was broke, disgraced, and facing his own legal troubles. Kim had lost her job and her reputation, and I was sitting in my backyard, successful, respected, and surrounded by people who valued loyalty and honesty over drama and deception. I raised my beer to the setting sun. "Welcome to nowhere," I said aloud. "Population, everyone who matters." 3 months later, I received divorce papers in the mail. Ella had signed them from her parents' house in Ohio, where she'd moved after pleading guilty to the stalking charges and agreeing to 5 years of probation. I signed them that same day and filed them with the court. The marriage was officially over. But my new life, my real life, was just beginning.